Recording. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. This is your daily Catalyst Astrology report for 7/7/2020. Let's get right into it. All right. So this chart is starting where there was a major aspect that I want to talk about. So this was last night into early this morning. Our moon is still in Aquarius. Our sun is now moving into the second half of Cancer. Asteroid Vesta is also right here, although it's not listed on this chart. And so they're pretty much conjunct as well in Cancer. Moon is moving through Aquarius today. Is going to be in Aquarius all day, and then we'll shift into Pisces by tomorrow. So this big aspect right here is the square between our moon in Aquarius and Uranus now in the second decan of Taurus. So the first decan of Taurus is really about getting to know the world around us, because Taurus and the second house are actual material resources. What is around us? What is at our disposal? What is valuable to us? What do we have around us that we can use to live our life? And so this, it's a pretty wide range of things. And so a lot of times it does have to do with money and resources, but also the actual land, like the physical earth under our feet, and all the natural elements. And it has to do with assets, right? And that could be material assets, that could be financial assets. It also can be energetic assets and emotional assets. It's what we come into this world, the environment around us, and what is valuable to us. And so the first 10 degrees in Taurus is about learning about that. We're getting to know that. And when we move into this second decan, these second 10 degrees now, which interestingly enough is actually ruled in the tarot, is the Six of Discs, which is the moon in Taurus, the second decan of Taurus. And so you're going to see here that there's kind of this little, I wouldn't call it a mutual reception entirely, but these two have signs that they're in signs that correspond to the other. In this case, the moon and the planet Uranus, because Aquarius is the home territory of Uranus, and although the moon is not at home in Taurus, it is very much happy in Taurus and is very powerful in Taurus. So even though there's a square, because these are fixed energies, right? That means they're very much at the element that they represent the element that they are associated with very strongly. There's not mutability. There's not movement through that cardinal energy. It is very much an expression of that element without much wiggle room, right? And so they're naturally square, Aquarius and Taurus, because Aquarius is the mind and Taurus is the body, the earth, the physical realm. And so when these two elements meet each other, they are in different trajectories that will come into that square angle, right? And there's no resolving squares, you just have to feel into them. But this mutual reception could really help. And I think most people probably experience this square the strongest through their dream time. And so it's important to maybe reflect on the dreams that you had and how your sleep space was last night, because this is likely coming through very strongly, especially because they are in that mutual reception type of energy. This degree is about receiving inspiration in a quiet moment, in a silent moment. It's like getting a download. And with the moon here, it's very intuitive. It's very much potentially in the sleep state. It doesn't have to be, but in this case, it probably was. It's about the subconscious realm, and it's about feeling. It's about the sense organ of our intuition, which is something that we have not identified scientifically yet, but that's really what we're talking about. And in square to Uranus and Taurus, as we move into the second decan of Taurus, the first 10 degrees is really about learning about the world around us and what is valuable to us and what are our assets, from financial assets, energetic assets, to physical assets. All of these assets represent the physical objective world around us that we are born into. This could represent our body too. Money, actual money, whereas Capricorn is the economy itself, the institution of the economy. Taurus is the actual currency, like the actual money itself, or the gold, or whatever is currency, is represented by Taurus. And as we move from the first decan, now in the second decan is about, especially this degree. This is a woman watering flowers in her garden. It is literally about cultivation and the amount and the energy that we put in order to cultivate what is beautiful and what is potentially, what is the potential of the natural world and what we could grow in terms of our assets and what we find valuable. And there's a way to do that. And so we're watering the garden, right? There's that element of water, of the emotion of feeling. And you have the divine feminine because it's a woman. And there is a sense of ownership because you're watering the flowers in your garden. So there's this possessiveness, which is a big part of the Taurus and second house. It's about ownership, about what we own, what we have at our disposal. So now Uranus is moving into the second decan, which is the path of the awakening. So we've gone through understanding what is and what we have at our disposal, what are our assets, and understanding them. And now we're moving into space with Uranus where we're going to start learning about how to work with them and cultivate what is naturally available to us into something that we find beautiful and valuable. Remember, Venus rules Taurus. What's valuable, what's beautiful, what's harmonizing with us in terms of love, and what's aesthetically pleasing as well, and what invokes that sense of beauty and harmony. Now, having them square like that, this inspiration, this download, right, into the mental sphere, into the third eye, into these upper chakras, really, we could feel absolutely like pushing that forward, seeing how we need to manage that, right? But we haven't quite got to that part. The first half of Aquarius is contribution, because Capricorn is about cardinal earth, what is actually created, the structures that give us externalized power. And then contribution, that's the first half of Aquarius. And then from there, you have management. So, and we'll get there today as well. And it's going to be important to keep that in mind because that's going to be a big part too of where we're actually headed by late tonight into tomorrow, which is a square, another square between Mercury retrograde in Cancer and Mars in Aries. This is going to be really important. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But this square was exact overnight. We have a long way to go, cultivating the actual assets. There is no bypassing the actual natural process of growth in our physical world. And we have to, the path of our awakening, as disruptive and revolutionary, right? Uranus it's that gateway into our awakening. It's going to take patience and an acknowledgement of what actually goes into growing something and cultivating things of value for us. And with here, it's instantaneous. Aquarius is kind of outside of time and space, and we might get inspiration about how to, especially outside of us, we might have gotten inspiration, and in terms of what is best for the collective, how we can contribute, how we can be our unique signature part of the collective. And it's not that what we've likely downloaded or been inspired by is not valid. It's just that it provides a real challenge to the ruler of Aquarius, which is in a sign that the moon actually loves to be in. So this is kind of that mutual reception energy. That if we see how these things complement each other, we can kind of deal with the square and not feel as frustrated or as challenged. Like I said, it happened overnight, late last night on the West Coast. So a lot of this probably came through in the dream space. So it's just something to keep in mind. Then let's see, we're going to go to right now. And like I said, the moon is also going to quincunx, and right now is coming into that quincunx with asteroid Vesta, which is not on this chart, and also with our sun in Cancer. Again, moving into the second half of the sign here, we've gone from decision, right? That's the first half of Cancer, into consolidation. We've made a decision about where we stand, where our power is, and now it's time to consolidate our power, personal power. This degree specifically is about the inner, now it's time to do the inner vision, is consolidating that power and having a very deep inner look at what that actually means, especially because we've made a decision. Again, having this quincunx here is an opportunity for an adjustment, because while the sun in asteroid Vesta, right, she is the goddess of service and the keeper of the hearth flame. The hearth flame is what sustains the community. As we're taking that, our service, right, a representation of our service to the collective, and the sun, which is the outer expression of our collective personality or collective consciousness. It's not really fitting well. This inner vision, this inner look is definitely not fitting well with a moon in Aquarius that is now getting stronger and stronger within this contribution and management of the collective health, of the collective ideal, and where we're headed in terms of the future as well, because Aquarius is always looking towards the future. It's always about the evolution of the collective. And because Aquarius is always thinking about that, is always focused there in this future-oriented space, there's not a lot of room for over here in Cancer, which is an individualized experience still, and we're looking deeply inward. So emotionally, we're gonna have this like, no, I want to, you know, I'm much more focused on where we're going collectively and what I can do for the collective and how we can manage this. But we are being also with Cancer, especially Mercury in Cancer and retrograde, especially because Mercury retrograde is going to square Mars in Aries. This quincunx is a really important moment for a readjustment in some ways, because even though emotionally here with the moon, we, like I said, we're focusing on how we can contribute to society, how we can, everything can be fair and balanced, and the humanitarian effort, we still are in a place here that some of the most important aspect of our service, and also for the health of our collective consciousness in some ways, is to start consolidating the personal power that we have come to understand and identify with as the sun has moved through Cancer. Still on fixed star Ceres as well here, so that's something to consider as well. The moon is also, if you go back a couple hours as well, the moon, right around the time actually that it was the moon, she was square to Uranus. She also was in trine to asteroid Juno. So who is Juno? Juno is, she's the wife of Zeus. She represents, she's the goddess, or Hera, you know, depending if you're going Roman or Greek. She's the wife of Zeus. She represents commitment and loyalty, and also betrayal, right? Because Zeus was notorious for stepping out on his wife, and she was not always that gracious about it. She used her power as well to, you know, to feed her own jealousy and her own feelings about being betrayed. But she's never stepped away from that role, right? She remained the partner to Zeus or Jupiter, regardless of what happens. But that doesn't mean she didn't express herself about the decisions that he made when it came to his actions with other women, basically. So she represents commitment and loyalty, and having her trine also to trying to, and she's in Libra, right? Libra's the scales of balance. It's about fairness, and it's about relationships being fair. And the one, you know, it's Libra's the seventh house. So Whew, boy. So while we're having that square with Uranus in Taurus, right? At the same time, the moon is also trine Juno in Libra, which is again coming into that second decan of Libra. It is the after going through all these rapids, the canoe is coming to safe waters. Um, this to me feels like it is our responsibility in some ways, and making a commitment to others to be the calm water in some ways, or to provide the canoe moving into, you know what I mean, to provide the canoe moving into um, calm waters, you know, to provide that space for people to have a commitment to moving through together, and then getting to this place where there can be kind of a respite. And that inspiration that came along with the moon in Aquarius at that 10 to 11 degree mark is very much foundationally balanced with this, with Juno at this degree of Libra. And even though it's going to take a long time and patience and work in order to cultivate the fullest expression of what is around us, we can find balance emotionally, and we can find some foundational balance, and security in some ways, you know, because trines are like the base of the pyramid. They are the foundation everything is built on. We can use that inspiration that we have, and feel a balance or feel a foundation with our commitment, and our loyalty to each other, to move through this together, uh, move through these narrow rapids, this, you know, tumultuous emotional time, and get to calm waters together. So that's, I think, where we can really utilize that inspiration from that degree of Aquarius. The other thing that I want to point out is that asteroid Ceres is stationing retrograde today, and something important about her as a figure, the goddess Ceres. She is the giver of the grain, right? She is the goddess of agriculture. Now, the reason she is important right now, especially going retrograde, is that her daughter Persephone was tricked into the underworld, and then basically forced to marry Hades, right? She became queen of the underworld. So her daughter, either she knowingly did it, right? Or she was captured and forced into it. And there's a lot of different versions of this, and a lot of different um, ideas about what actually this represents. But the one thing about Ceres is that she was so distraught, um, that she tried to, you know, no other gods could go into the underworld and come out except Mercury. So she has Mercury go in and kind of like broker some sort of deal. And the deal was that she gets her daughter back half of the year, and the other half of the year she goes back to her throne in the underworld, because that was, you know, she was, you know, regardless how you feel about it, she went into the underworld, and now she doesn't get to escape. Nobody gets to escape. And she was lured in, or she was uh fascinated and had kind of a, you know, an interest in the bad boy, you know what I mean? And that kind of led her to going there, but now she can't leave. And so she's now the queen of the underworld. So when she comes back for half the year, and the half the year that she's in the underworld, her mother Ceres is so distraught, and wants to punish everybody for it, basically, that is when the land is fallow and won't grow anything. And so it actually, you know, talks about the seasonal growth of the plant life, you know, in the part of the world where there are actual seasons, right? But she also is not playing, right? That's the thing about Ceres, is that she will punish everybody, because of um, her emotional state about this situation, and it's perpetual forever. And for her to go retrograde in Pisces, she's not playing. And Pisces, as we know, can very much be the victim mentality and the martyr. And for her to go retrograde, it's going to make her whole archetype way more obvious. And I suspect that as she moves retrograde through Pisces, We're gonna see some earth changes, I think, especially around water, because we're in Pisces, oceans, and she doesn't care. Ceres is so distraught by the loss of her daughter, even though her daughter made the choice to go where she knew she wasn't supposed to. However, she was enticed. Now, like I said, there's a lot of different ideas about this, that she was straight up raped and kidnapped, or that she was enticed and tricked. Either way, it's Ceres that we're focusing on. So I anticipate, now that she's going retrograde, that whole dynamic is going to become very obvious, and much more on the surface. And because she's in Pisces, there's going, I really, and she represents the cycles of the earth. So I suspect that we're going to start seeing some real shifting in terms of the earth and oceans. That could be tsunamis, that could be earthquakes, in order to let everybody know how she feels about this situation, with her daughter. So that's something else I wanted to bring up. So, and then the last thing is, we're going to move forward to when Mercury is square to Mars in Aries, because this is really important, because Mercury is retrograde in Cancer, going back over all of this information about our decision, our emotional decision of where we're rooted, who is our family, how do we feel about our family of origin, and specifically travel and the realm of communication and ideas, and reconsidering our decision about where we are rooted and where our allegiance actually is. And Mercury is the mind, and so it's all about what's going on in the mind, and also rules Virgo as well. So, but it's still analytical, and it's still about the mental process about these things. So Mars in Aries is at home and keeps getting power every single day that Mars is charging through Aries. So this square specifically is going to be about the awareness of the natural forces at work, Cancer, right? Because we are talking about water. And so we're talking about emotional energy, feelings. We're talking about the imagination as well, that comes along with this archetype, especially because it's the Cancer archetype provides containment so that we can feel safe enough to emotionally be ourselves, and that allows imagination to start to grow. This degree where as we move forward here, this degree where Mars, there we go, is going to be Sabian symbol 7 degrees of Aries. This is when the consciousness in terms of Aries, which is all potential energy, comes into, starts to realize how to work with the duality within. And there's this moment of recognition that it's possible to live 2 separate lives simultaneously, because that is part of learning how to manage the Aries archetype, because it is about the subjective experience and the ego and the self, but it's about the seed, and everything that is, all of the processes of nature are embedded in the seed. And when we get to this point with Mars in Aries, where it's squaring Mercury in Cancer, Mars is going to realize that I can do 2 things at once. I can be 2 people at once. I mean, in fact, it's necessary for me to move forward that I start working very directly with this energy of existing in 2 places at once, or having the spiritual and the material aspect existing at the same time. That's what I'm trying to say. The spiritual and the material existing at the same time, but it's still contained within the seed point, within the ego, within the subjective experience. And Mars is all about that, the subjective experience. Squaring Mercury, which is about the mental perspective, the mind and the communication when it comes to where our allegiance is emotionally. And the imagination that we can cultivate as a result of our allegiance emotionally. Because once we make a decision, about our allegiance, we are giving ourselves the ability, we are contained, we are protected, right? And then we have the ability to emotionally allow ourselves to um, imagine something different, to see the magical elemental forces at work, because we have this containment here. But remember, Mercury is retrograde. And I think the square here is really going to be aggravated by the retrograde specifically. And because Cancer is about emotional decision and security and foundation and rootedness, and Aries is all about the self. So you can also see where there's going to be a square in terms of like, this is the individual ego experience, and this is about where do we plant our flag, where do we root ourselves, and the emotional aspect about that. And with Mercury, it's all about considering it from a mental perspective. It's hard to do the spiritual and the material at the same time, while as a person, as an individual person, as opposed to the where we find ourselves rooted and our ideas about that. I think that's really going to be the square here, is that we're going back over this territory in our mind. And Mars is just like, I'm just on the warpath. And I see now that I can do both of these things. I can live both of these ways at the same time, and it can be within me. And I think this is really powerful and important. But we also, it's going to provide a real challenge to where we may have planted our flag as we go back over that territory and kind of consider that. So a lot to be learned from this. And like I said, it's going to happen. Look at this, 1 a.m. So it'll be overnight again. So look to your dream state, I would say, to get more information. That seems to be pretty relevant right now. So I know it was a long forecast for today. There was things that I just felt like were really important to go over. Thank you for joining me. Everything you need is in the description box below. Reach out through email or Facebook if you're interested in a reading, a natal chart reading, intuitive reading, Reiki treatments, and starseed astrology readings. And if you're doing the daily medicine, I'll see you on the daily medicine pretty soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye.